The name's Bond. James Bond.
Tell me what you know of James Bond.
He's a 00, and a wild one.
Charming, sophisticated secret agent.
Daniel Craig's final outing as James Bond comes out this year. Fingers crossed. Now seems like a really good time to go through all the James Bond films so far and give them a really good ranking. So sit back, relax, you've got a license to chill as I go through all the James Bond movies so far from worst to best ranked. Note, however, I'm only doing the official MGM Eon production of James Bond movies. So that means the likes of Never Say Never Again and the original comedic Casino Royale are not included in this ranking. Same goes for the original TV broadcast of Casino Royale.
Diamonds are forever.
Diamonds Are Forever was the first direct sequel to a previous James Bond movie. The problem is that both James Bond and the villain from that previous movie had been recast in Diamonds Are Forever.
Good evening, Mr. Bond. Blofeld. Good evening, 007. Double jeopardy, Mr. Bond. You killed my only other double, I'm afraid. After his death, volunteers were, understandably, rather scarce. Such a pity. All that time and expense, simply to provide you with one mock heroic moment.
There were also two really annoying, really corny henchmen in this film that just popped up here and there, mostly for comedic purpose. The less said about them, the better.
Stop right there. Who are you?
Dr. Tynan sent us.
Why didn't he come himself?
He was taken sick. Bitten by the bug. He sent this for you.
If God had wanted man to fly,
He would have given him wings, Mr. Kidd.
Ultimately, Diamonds Are Forever is Sean Connery's final outing as James Bond. Final official outing as James Bond. Sadly, it was dull, forgettable, and really disappointing. It also showed signs of veering more and more into cheesy, corny territory, which would practically define the next iteration of James Bond.
Yes and no.
Pierce Brosnan's final outing as James Bond is certainly memorable, but for all the wrong reasons. It's titled Die Another Day, but after watching it, you probably wish you died earlier. This is the Bond film that really pushed things just too far, and that's saying something when a previous Bond film took James Bond into space and had him using laser guns. Now, James Bond can surf like the best of them. There's an ice palace, Madonna, weird invisible car gadgets, laser weapons, a huge satellite that can shoot down and destroy parts of the planet, corny and cheesy one-liners. Oh, and did I mention Madonna? Madonna needs to be mentioned twice because one, she's in the film, and two, she quite frankly put out the worst Bond song ever. I mean, why would you want to make a pop, hip, Bond song. It's totally against what this series is or should be. Like I said, Die Another Day is memorable, and it does veer into being somewhat enjoyable because of how bad it is at times.
Fill her up, please.
All I wanted was a sweet distraction for an hour or two. Had no intention to do the things we've done. Funny how it always goes.
Octopussy. So the title is one thing, the rest of the film is another. The biggest problem with Octopussy is that outside of the title, it's forgettable. There are some decent action scenes, there's an extended sequence on a train which is okay, but other than that, not much to say about this film.
For your eyes only can see me through the night.
After going into space, the producers of the Bond franchise felt it was time to bring Bond back down to Earth and to ground him. So what did they do? Well, they took inspiration from one of the best Bond movies up to that point, the name of which I won't reveal just yet, and they basically tried to remake it in certain regards. It wasn't all that successful though, because like Octopussy, this one was another somewhat forgettable movie. They actually went a little too far in grounding things in reality because it made things a little mundane, a little basic. Hell, the villain is in many ways kind of just an ordinary man with extraordinary plans. They also started things off by killing off Blofeld, this time a faceless man sitting in a wheelchair. What did they do? They dropped him down a chimney. It sounds like a joke, killing off the biggest villain in this franchise in such a demeaning way. And it was.
He acts while other men just talk. He looks at this world and wants it all. So he strikes like thunderbolt.
Thunderball is yet another entry into this franchise that's low down on my rankings simply because of how forgettable it kind of is. Albeit it's more memorable than the previous two entries. This is the Bond film that takes James Bond underwater, but not too far underwater. There's a bad guy with an eye patch. He looks cool-ish, but I couldn't tell you what his name is without researching it. But while it took Bond underwater, it also took Bond into the skies. Yes, this is the James Bond film that introduced the jetpack, and it's the only James Bond film, to my memory, that has the jetpack in it. But while introducing us to the jetpack, it also introduced us to very strict health and safety, because the stunt double refused to do the jetpack scenes without a helmet.
Meeting you with a view to a kill.
Roger Moore's final entry as the titular James Bond character came a little bit too late. Why? Well, at this point Roger Moore was starting to show his age. He was almost 60. That in itself isn't that big a problem. The problem is that the film never acknowledges his age. It never acknowledges the fact that Roger Moore is starting to look old and he's starting to be less physically capable of doing half the things he has to do. So in this film, you've got a 60-year-old man running around beating people up, chatting up people half his age, and all the while he's acting as if he's like 20 or 30 years old. It's just weird and awkward. It becomes especially awkward when his co-star, the Bond girl in this film, was literally half his age.
Oh, by the way, you didn't say what part of the state you come from, Miss...
No, I didn't.
I suppose you travel a lot?
Your helicopter leaves in 20 minutes.
Oh, does that mean you're not staying the night? I was hoping we'd spend the evening together. Now I shall be all alone.
I doubt that.
Oh. Well, let me walk you to the chopper.
That won't be necessary. Someone will take care of you.
Oh, you'll see to that personally, will you?
In addition to all this though, it has a crazy zany villain played by Christopher Walken, Steed from the original British TV show Avengers, and Grace Jones. Sadly, the best part of this film is probably the theme song done by Duran Duran.
When you were young and your heart was an open book, you used to say, live and let live. You know you did, you know you did, you know you did. But if this ever-changing world in which we live in makes you give in and cry, say live and let die.
From his last entry to his first, Live and Let Die introduced us to Roger Moore's James Bond. Although it should be noted that he hadn't quite set himself apart from the Bonds that came before him yet. In this film, James Bond takes on local drug lords, a dictator, and voodoo. Yes, you heard me right, voodoo. Although I might not be pronouncing that right. This film came out amidst the boom of blaxploitation films, so they wanted to capitalize on that. The problem, and it's a pretty big problem, is that the ways in which they tried to capitalize on it, well, they're not really good for modern audiences and they really don't hold up. There's also the really famous and popular Bond song by Paul McCartney and Wings.
like the moonraker goes.
Another example of a Bond film trying to capitalize on the success of another film at the moment is Moonraker. This time James Bond mimics Star Wars and he goes to space and he gets to use laser weapons. It's silly, very silly. This is also the final Bond film to feature Jaws out of the two films that he was in. He started off as an intimidating, scary, giant man who was really threatening. And then in this film they try to make him sympathetic and likeable and a joke of his former self.
Release the door lock. I'll see if I can operate it manually.
It's jammed too.
Well, here's to us.
It's also Shirley Bassey's third and final Bond song, but quite frankly also the worst of her Bond songs. And that's the end of part 1 of this ranking. No need to cry though, I will be back next week with part 2, so tune in then to see what comes next. If you've liked this, you can subscribe to my channel to get more content like this. I would really appreciate that. You can also go over to Twitter and Instagram and follow me at @the_Graham Burton if you want.